With a book as large and, to be honest, preposterous and real as Ulysses, you can spend a lot of time delving into weird oddities. I remember meeting a woman who was doing a PhD on the references to music within Ulysses, and at the point I was talking to her, she was on about 1500. There were probably more. For fun, let's have a look at the hats. Now, this may sound ridiculous, but you can go online and look up. There's a very, very good blogspot page on the hats in Ulysses, because of course there is. Ulysses is that weird thing that you can find almost anything in it, and you can get into great depth about it. There are a number of hats mentioned. I think the earliest mention of a hat comes as Haynes talks about taking his soft grey hat from the holdfast of the hammock early on in the novel. The first one I'll talk about in any length, because I'm not going to be talking about the women's hats. Sorry, my knowledge of bonnets is poor and weak. Is what's his name? Stephen Dedalus and his Latin Quarter hat. A big, floppy, wide hat. This is particularly in keeping with James Joyce, because as we know from images of him as a young man, he himself wore a big, floppy, black Latin Quarter hat, was swaddled up in a big black coat, particularly when he was in France, in Paris, as a young man. So again, we get that other familiar connection with Joyce, or between Joyce and Stephen Dedalus. So yeah, hats. As you can see, this is one. It's the first proper hat I got. I picked up many years ago, 22 or 3 years ago, and I wore this for most of my youth. And I dearly love this hat, although it's beaten senseless. Technically speaking, it's a fedora. But a fedora has a wide brim, boys and girls. A trilby, the one that you think is the hat that you think is the hat of the hipster, is the trilby, which is a much more narrow brim. The brim here, as you can see, hopefully you can see, is very wide as opposed to a trilby brim. See, it's down to almost to where the fingers meet. Worn like this. You'll always see, by the way, for boys and girls, boys' hats have the bow on the left side, ladies have it on the right side. This hat has seen more countries than any of ye. In contrast, let's have a look at Bloom's standard hat, the bowler. Another beautiful hat, the one that I have a few years. This is my second or third bowler. God help us, I enjoy wearing a bowler, but I seldom feel appropriate doing. This is not a hat, by the way, that's made for a head that's made for wearing hats. Bowlers become a major thing at that time. It was the working man's hat. It was a hat that you would wear on a building site. It was a hat that you could wear to an official thing. When I was a kid, they were the hats of the English businessman, although I don't know how much of that was real and how much wasn't. It is the hat of Charlie Chaplin, of Laurel and Hardy, and it is the hat that we see used in Waiting for Godot. A fine hat, the hat of Leopold Bloom. The differences you can see between different hats. British hats tend to be more, this is a British bowler, slightly more oval, not too high a crown, but it's a fun little hat to wear. You can see the slight angling on it. Do you see that? Yeah? Hopefully you see curves. The American bowler and the Irish bowler are actually quite similar in that they would have a slightly higher top, and you also had the Belgian or French bowler, which was much more egg-shaped. Because literally I have it here, we talk also of Martin Cunningham's silk hat. Hang on, let me get this. The hair has to go under this for this to stay on. Whoop. Ooh, it's getting beaten up a bit. One of the very few toppers I've had. Martin Cunningham at the beginning of, I think it's chapter 6, Hades. Let me find chapter 6 in Hades till we read the offensive article. Martin Cunningham first poked his silk-hatted head into the creaking carriage and entering deftly seated himself. The topper is a great old hat. We don't see it too much anymore. It's generally used. You can get them easily enough in the sense of a poorly manufactured felt thing that will fall apart the minute that water hits it. There are a number of different types over the year, but you can see it's like stovepipe, and maybe they call it in the United States. It has a sort of longish thing. I'm not too sure. I presume that's to allow the heat to circulate, or the air to circulate above the head. But it's, again, different kind of a hat. I would love to have one of those hard ones that you could collapse, the collapsible opera hats. The idea with them was you put them under your seat, but no. Now, the de rigueur, hat hair. The de rigueur hat of people who are going around Dublin to celebrate Bloomsday on the 16th of June every year is the straw boater. And it's an interesting one because it is a very typically Edwardian hat, and it's the kind of hat you would wear going to the seaside. It is, as they would have called it back in the time, a gay hat to wear, a very pleasant, uplifting kind of, this is holiday time kind of hat as far as I'm concerned. So I didn't trawl through the book. I took a quick squint at that wonderful page about the hats, and I'll put a link down below. And that wonderful page has all references to hats and caps, and there's many references to different hats. I mean, for example, they talk about the letters on the Healy advertisers, tall white hats, because they have H-E-L-Y-S spelled out, and they've all kinds of different things. There's many references to straw hats, but there's only one in the entire book to a boater. And that is the hat that is bought by, what's his name's father, Bloom's father, Rudolph Bloom, formerly Rudolph Virag. The Queen's Hotel, Ennis, County Clare, where Rudolph Virag died on the evening of the 27th of June, 1886. After having, though not in consequence of having, purchased at 3:15 p.m. on the afternoon of 27th June 1886 a new boater straw hat, extra smart, after having, though not in consequence of having, purchased at the hour in the place aforesaid, the tocsin aforesaid, at the general drapery store of James Cullen, 4 Main Street, Ennis. He bought a boater on the day he had decided to kill himself. If I'm not mistaken, that is in the middle of Ithaca. So we have that, but my hat, I can't get hold of a good boater here, strangely enough, or at least I don't have the money to get a proper one, even though you'd expect that in the United States. We have a lot of boaters. Personally, I go for the other kind of straw hat, the Panama hat, a hat that will keep a little bit of sun off the head, but allow air for space for the circulation of air in and out. I have a sweaty head, folks. Hence, a Panama. Also, a Panama hat can manage my peculiarly, let's say, potato-shaped head in a way that poor old Rudy Virag's potato-shaped life would not have been able for.
Those girls, those lovely seaside girls, all dimples, smiles and curls, your head it simply whirls. They look all right, complexions pink and white. They've diamond rings and dainty feet, golden hair from Regent Street, lace and grace and lots of face, those pretty little seaside girls.